The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at CoolStuffInc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 596.
It's the most played games of all time.
For you. Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Geoff explores why Hanabi could hold the key to our digital future, and we answer questions about our favorite endings of games, what games we'd like to see in VR, and what makes a game a classic. Then we look back at our own history with our top 10 most played games in our lives. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Colonel Mustard to my Professor Plum, Tom Vassell.
I always resonated with Professor Plum.
Yeah? Well, he's the purple one.
Yeah, that's what it... Well, yeah, purple's my favorite color, but it's... Did you ever read any of the books?
There were books?
Yeah, they were... Do you remember reading the Encyclopedia Brown books?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so they were similar to that, right? Like, Mr. Body would come in and be like, who stole this, blah, blah, blah. And then they would, all the different characters, and then you just have to figure out who did it by knowing something that, oh, well, penguins aren't actually from the North Pole, they're from the South Pole, something like that.
Right. And so it was like a prequel to the game, because Mr. Body's still alive?
Well, in the last story, he always died. And then in the next book, it was like, oh, no, I actually just was knocked out. So,
yes. Fake murder.
Well, for kids.
Fake murder for kids. Good.
Yeah, now I'm actually trying to remember what these were. I definitely read them. I don't know if I was a kid when I read them, but I definitely read them.
Huh. I need to show the original Clue film to my kids. I have not done that.
Oh, I found it.
1 + 1 + 2 + 1.
It's a Clue book series. It was a series of 18 children's books published in the 1990s. I guess I was a teenager, but whatever. We'll pretend I was a kid. The first was Who Killed Mr. Body, then The Secret Passage, The Case of the Invisible Cat, etc. But like I said, someone attempts to murder Mr. Body. In the final chapter of each book, in the solution, no explanation is given, and it's suggested that Mr. Body actually dies. In the introduction of subsequent books, however, Mr. Body explains how he survived the end of the previous book.
Huh.
With the exception of the 18th book, this allows the series to come to an end at any point without ending abruptly, and also leaves it open for another book. The last one came out in 1997.
Interesting.
And
I
it had
had no idea.
Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum, Mr. Green, Miss Peacock, Miss Scarlet, and Mrs. White. I really remember reading these. It was just trying to figure out what happened and stuff. I don't know.
All right. Well, now I've learned something today.
Maybe you can get those for your kids.
Maybe. My both kids are avid readers, so yeah.
Did you like Encyclopedia Brown?
I did. I was never very good at solving the mysteries. I often didn't think about it long enough, and I just sort of plow ahead toward the solution. Yeah,
that's kind of where I was, too. I would sit there thinking, I don't know. I was looking at the back of the book. Oh, yeah, if I thought about it, I probably would have figured that out. Or I didn't know that gold weighed that much. You know? From what was his arch nemesis was always in half of them, like bugs or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
There was always two. There was one bully character, and then there was always one shyster character, and he would foil the shyster character, and he would outsmart the bully, and then he would solve cases for his dad. Okay, this is actually a show about board games.
Well, speaking of board games, I have found this to be true when I'm playing some of the mystery, like escape room games. There was one of the unlocks recently that's, no, it was one of the exit games that's like a murder on the Orient Express, and there's a mystery at the very end that I totally didn't get right. Because I just didn't want to spend the time to really figure it out. I'm like, it's you. And it was totally wrong. So the same inclinations that I had when reading the Encyclopedia Brown books are manifesting themselves now with the exit and unlock games.
You know, that reminds me. I finally got the box of the Simulacra games, the Wilson Wolf affair.
Simulacra.
Well, okay. Well, now I know how to say it. Have you seen this?
I have not. I've just heard of simulacrums before.
Okay, well, what this is I think it's an escape room in a box. I'm pretty sure of it.
Okay, you're not sure?
Well, yeah, it looks, and so a big package comes to your house. So I backed this. I don't know when this was supposed to be delivered in like July 2018. Well, you know how that works. I don't get too upset about these things, but it finally showed up, and I didn't even realize it. I opened the box and stuff started falling out, and so I got a better box and put everything in the box. And it's full of all kinds of stuff. There's, I didn't get the big package. I really wanted to, but it was too expensive. There was one that even came with a viewfinder.
Okay.
But there's a newspaper in it. There's a cartoon in it. There's like a thing that you can build where you spin it like those old motion pictures, like the very first motion pictures.
Yeah.
There's posters. There's letters from people to other people. There's 3D glasses, there's maps, and it's a big puzzle. And there's an envelope that says, when you've noticed solution, open this. And there's another envelope that says, have fun. And so I'm going through this, and I think that the problem I'm having is I don't know, like, the path. Like, when you play an escape room game, you go and, okay, here's the first puzzle, let's solve it, go to the second puzzle.
Right.
But I don't know what the first puzzle is. I found one puzzle. Actually, I found like 8 puzzles, that I'm finding throughout the thing, but I don't know. Do I need more stuff before I solve these puzzles? And some of them, like the opening letter basically says you don't have to destroy anything if you don't want to, but it sure seems like if you don't destroy stuff, you have to go out of your way to not destroy it.
Huh.
Like there looks like there's things you should draw on or fold or cut out. I'm like, well, I could trace that and copy that and all that, but
right.
So what I'm doing with this is I'm soloing it, essentially, and pulling it out of the box and just looking at stuff and working on it for a while. And then when I get annoyed, I put it all back in and put it away.
Yep. Okay.
And I was reminded of this because I just got a letter from them because one of the letters that was in the box was misprinted. They sent the wrong one for the wrong pledge levels or something. I guess there's fewer clues. Okay. And they were like, oh, we're really sorry. We shouldn't do this sort of thing. It's a really big deal. And I was like, well, it's not a big deal, except that was the first puzzle I decided to work on. I was working on this puzzle. I was like, I don't feel like there's enough information here. So I went online and looked at their updates to the project. They're like, one of the puzzles is a mistake. I was like, no, that can't be possible. That I picked the one puzzle, but it was. But, now I have all the information. And guess what? I still feel like there's not enough information. It's one of those logic puzzles, the books you can buy at the store. Yeah. And you have the grids and you cross out stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Except that it's not all on one piece of paper. Like they have some of the information, then there's letters back and forth. Essentially, the puzzle is that a bunch of people are getting paid to work on this cartoon. The whole thing's about this cartoon, this old-timey 1930s or 20s cartoon. And so the whole thing is about these people who are doing the voice acting for these characters. And they're all getting paid different amounts, and they found out about it, so they're annoyed. So I have to figure out who is playing what character and how much they're getting paid. I don't know why I'm figuring this out, actually. Because it must be like something that's for the bigger puzzle. Well, I don't know what. So the whole thing is fascinating, and it's just, there's like, I have this big box here of all this stuff. There's even a crossword puzzle in it. In fact, one of the things that I cheated a little bit. Not cheated, but it came with one of those 9 tiles that only fit together in one way.
Okay.
Where they have stuff on the outside of them.
Yeah.
They used to sell them everywhere, and you'd buy them with like fish and stuff. And I worked on that for like 30 minutes. I was like, Holly. So I gave it to my daughter and said, I will reward you if you solve this. So she did. And then I was like, I don't know what you solved it, but I don't know what it means. So we took a picture of it so he would not forget how to put it together again before we put it back in the box. So
was there something on the other side of it? Like when you put it together, did you flip them over? I'm Eric Summerer.
Maybe we should do this together. But see, this is kind of weird because this is not something I would bring to a game meetup, right? There's just too much. It does look like it's something you could work on with like 20 people, maybe, you know? There's so much stuff in it, but I guess I need a little bit of focus on it. I think there's some forums and groups and stuff that give information. I haven't really gone and looked at those yet. Like I said, I feel like if I take it in small bites, like I'm going to give my wife the jigsaw puzzle because she likes jigsaw puzzles. And so my family will get involved.
Okay.
And I gave one of the other kids one of these pictures because it said, find these hidden things in it, and I don't even know what they're talking about. So...
Well, then you're not soloing this. This is a group. This is a family experience.
When I'm done, I'm going to be like, I did this by myself. I will not. I'll say the vassals have conquered this.
There you go.
Yeah, so anyway, I can't really, though, give it a good rating right now because, I mean, it's entertaining me, but I did pledge this was one of the more expensive pledges I've done in my life. And I'm not sure I could recommend this, but I think some people like this whole thing. You go in and first you have to find the puzzle before you can solve it. Like when you do an escape room, usually the puzzles are pretty obvious.
Right.
Well, maybe when it's done, I'll say this was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had.
Okay.
We'll see, but that could be like what episode are we in right now? 596. So in 696, check with me.
Sure thing. I'll make a note.
All right, folks, well, we've been talking about a lot of stuff. One of the things we want to mention is if you backed us in our Kickstarter, we appreciate it, and you should have gotten your backer kit information by the time you hear this to back it. If you want to back the Dice Tower and haven't, we'll put that information to join the backer kit soon. We're going to let the people who did back the Kickstarter get in there first, but we'll post it and make it open to everyone soon enough. But if you haven't got it and you did back the Kickstarter, please email us at help@dicetower.com. Also, when you're listening to this, we're heading to Dice Tower West. If you're going to Dice Tower West, we hope to see you there. Me and Mandy and Eric and Suzanne and Sam and Z and Roy and Mark and Amber.
Amble?
And, I was spoonerizing there for a moment. Amber and Christy. Amby and Christy. What is wrong?
Amby and Crystal?
I'm very sorry.
Not Amble and Christy. Sorry.
And Aram
those are two different
and Tarek will be there anyhow. So we'll all be there. We're going to play games, have a good time. I know a lot of people said, oh, we wish we could come, but it's sold out. We know it's sold out, but there will be another one next year. And if you haven't seen already, yesterday we announced the dates for the Dice Tower Retreat. This is kind of weird because I'm not saying the date now because it's in the future from when we recorded this, but you will, if you go to a board game breakfast that was posted on March 4th, 2019, the date and information will be in that one. So if you want to come to a small event, it's going to be 250 people. I'm capping it at that, where we're just going to get together and play games. This is if you just want to go and play games. Sure, you can go to the Keys and to Miami, I guess, while you're there. Sure, there's that outside stuff. But
if
we are here.
If you want to.
No. And some people want to do that, right? But this is going to be essentially we're playing games. And I think that last year that was pretty much true, right, Eric? I played more games at the retreat than I have at any other convention ever.
Well, yeah, you usually don't play much at conventions because you're doing other stuff.
Sure, but even at conventions where I play a lot of games, I don't know that I've ever played this many. I just kept playing game after game after. I think everybody was.
Yeah.
So that is coming up. So that's a lot of announcements. We haven't even started talking about games. Well, I guess we talked about
You did.
Yes. Well, then Eric, why don't you tell us about a game that came out just 2 years ago, actually, but go ahead.
Yes, this is a 2017 game. It's called Frogriders, published by Eggert Spiele and Stronghold Games. Frogriders, the theme is that you are a band of elves that is a master of riding frogs, and you're having some sort of competition. Really, it's an abstract game in which the pieces look like elves riding frogs.
Hey,
if you've
it's
ever
thematic.
Yes, very. If you've ever seen one of those solitaire puzzles that you've got like marbles or golf tees in like a cross pattern, and you're supposed to jump over the tees, then you remove each one. Every one you jump over, you remove one. That is the setup. You've got this big cross grid, and you fill it with different colored Frogriders. And on your turn, you're going to jump over one of the Frogriders. You're going to send one over another one and then take the Frogrider you jumped over. You may then, optionally, turn in one of the Frogriders you've acquired, whether it's the one you just got or another one that you have from earlier, and you can trigger some special abilities. One of them is simply you can jump over another frog, or another, if you turn in a yellow one, you can trade that for one of the frogs in the village that have already been turned in on previous turns. So basically swapping a color. There's another one, blue, that lets you get scoring cards, which can earn you points for endgame. It can also give you special powers, like maybe you can jump in an L shape, or jump diagonally, or give like a running leap over before you jump over a frog. That really open up your options for playing the game. You're basically trying to collect sets of colors. There's some public scoring goals. You get a private scoring goal at the beginning of the game. Maybe every pair of red Frogriders will earn me 5 points at the end of the game. So I'm earning points for my private goal. There's public goals. There's the cards I can draft during the course of the game. Also, the brown Frogriders are worth 1 point at the end. And that's how we go. You go until a player cannot make a legal move. So you keep removing all these Frogriders and trading them in, and it moves pretty quickly. My kids really enjoyed this game. I was a little more lukewarm on it because the tension is pretty strong here. Every time you trigger an ability, you're giving up one of your Frogriders, which can very much be points. And I decided to go with one of the private goals that was get one of each color. And you get 6 points. Good goal. It does. It seemed I would be diversified, but because I was collecting all of the colors, I really didn't want to turn in any of them to trigger these abilities. And my kids, because they saw all these pretty cards, turned in all of the blue ones really fast. That's how you get the cards. Turn in the blue Frogriders. And they got all these special ability cards. And then all the blue ones were gone. And it's possible to maybe get some blue from the center by using yellow Frogriders, but I was also trying to collect yellow Frogriders, and those are the least prevalent on the board. So the blues and the yellows disappeared really fast. And then I could no longer make my sets because the blues and the yellows were gone. And all of my ability to get cards was gone because all the blues were in the center of the board. And so I was kind of stuck just grabbing whatever points I could possibly grab. It still is a quick, simple abstract that my kids obviously enjoyed. And I said, so does this one go on the trade pile? Do you want to keep this? They said, no, we want to keep this. We like this game. So they are thumbs up. I'm a little more middle of the road here, but it is a nice family weight abstract with some nice options for different scoring possibilities. But there is that tension. You're going to run out of blues and yellows really fast.
When I first played the game, I actually thought it was too simple, too just chaotic. But I played it some more, and I like it. I will say I like it best with 2. I feel there's the most control with 2.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because then you can sort of set up for things, maybe use those red ones to do double turns. And if you're playing with too many players, those colors disappear really fast. Anyway, that was Frogriders.
Alrighty, well, I'm going to talk about a game for the very first time this episode. And let's talk about Counterfeiters. Now, I'm going to say something that you will not hear me say often or maybe ever again. Counterfeiters, a game from Quinted Games about counterfeiting money, is a game that has a lot of paper money in, and that's a good thing.
What?
I know. I was actually pretty annoyed when I opened the box because I was like, look at all this paper money. And not only was it paper money, but it was all stuck together like one of those yellow sticky pads.
Oh, really?
So you have to peel each dollar bill off. And I was like, are you kidding me? Peel, 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 peel. However, the game is actually about counterfeiting money. So in this game, you start with a printer and some ink or some good paper. And that gives you 1 star to the quality of your counterfeiting. And on your turn, it's a little worker placement game. You put out some workers. And by the way, you're all animals, anthropomorphic animals who are counterfeiting, who live in the city of Miami. which apparently is populated by animals.
Oh, in the future.
Yes. So you place these workers out, and you can print counterfeit money if you want to. So I might go somewhere and print counterfeit money, and I look how many stars I have. And so if you have ink, that gives you a star. If you have paper, that gives you a star. If you have holograms, that gives you a star. So you can get like three-star counterfeit money down to 1 star.
Okay.
And they actually have different counterfeit bills. They actually get lighter from the 1 star to the 3 stars that look much closer to the real counterfeit bills.
Mm-hmm.
You can then go change these counterfeit bills in other spots to real money. So you can go to the local grocery store,
right,
and change in some counterfeit bills and get them into real cash. Or you can go to the local fence and do it to him, but he will give you less money for it. However, there are many spaces on the board that when you go to them, you move a police officer down this track, which is kind of a track which tracks how long the game is. Mm-hmm. And when this officer lands on certain spots, they go to the grocery store and explain to them how to spot counterfeit money. So they will stop taking the 1-star money and then stop taking the 2-star and then stop taking the 3-star.
Huh.
Also, there are various points in the game where the police officer will land on the mob boss, who will show up to everyone and demand half of their real money. So sometimes it's nice to keep the money in counterfeit form because he doesn't want that money. But there's also spaces where you can go and put the money in a private island account. So you can put as much of your real money there. But you also need that real money because you can use that money to buy better equipment, to make more counterfeit money, to increase your counterfeit money, or to buy a private jet, which you can then go down to these islands for free to drop off the money. Or you can buy lottery tickets where you've rigged the system so that they're worth money at the end of the game, but the mob boss doesn't touch them. There's also diners you can buy, which will launder your counterfeit money into regular money. This all sounds complex, but this is actually a filler-style game. It's in a very small box, the size of a game Eric likes to shout really loud. Let me try to think of another one. Lost Cities.
Lost Cities!
Yeah, so Lost Cities, it's a little bit... It's a slightly different shape than that, but I'm talking that's how small it is, but it's a worker placement game that feels small, takes 30 minutes, but feels very meaty. And I really, really enjoyed this one. I've played it several times, had a lot of fun with it. I even played it in a place I never expected to play a game, which was the South Park Studios.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, turns out that Trey Parker, who's one of the designers of, or one of the head people from South Park, listens to our show.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
I was in LA and he invited me over to play games. So we did. This was one of the games we played. And so he's very good at laundering money and beat me, I believe.
That's pretty cool. They've slipped games into South Park at least recently, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, Western Legends was on recently. Yeah, they had a lot of games. You would have approved of their game selection. It was quite good.
Yeah.
All right, tell me about another game.
So I played Dice Settlers at the end of last year, shortly, actually at Essen, if I recall correctly. This is a game from NSKN Games, designed by David Turksi. And it is, like you would assume, a dice rolling game, a bag building game, where you've got dice that offer resources and actions, and you're trying to increase your civilization and your board presence and all that stuff. The dice come in lots of different colors, and you start with a certain assortment, and you roll a number of dice at the beginning of your turn, and that's your actions that you're able to perform. So you might be able to put more of your cubes out on the central board. You might be able to collect resources of various types. You might be able to draft more dice into your bag. And you're only going to get to do 2 of those actions in any particular round. So you roll your dice, you can manipulate the dice, re-roll using certain symbols, and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But ultimately, you're going to do 2 actions. And of course, if you get multiple symbols of a type, you can do a stronger version of that action. So if I get 3 exploration symbols, I get to look at 3 tiles and choose one of them so I can pick the one I really, really want. But this limitation factor of only getting to do 2 actions makes for some really difficult decisions on any given round, because you might want to do all sorts of things. You might get the symbols to do 4 or 5 actions, but you can only do 2 of them. You can sometimes earn extra actions, but that's harder to do. And you continue like this until a certain number of dice are gone, or you run out of tiles, or you run out of victory points. Kind of like Race for the Galaxy. There's a pool of victory points, and if somebody grabs enough of them, that can also trigger the end of the game. You count up points. Any one of those things can be pushed pretty quickly. If somebody really pushes for a particular end game trigger, it can happen faster than you might think. There are also technologies that you can invest in that make it easier to do things, get you extra symbols, extra actions, all sorts of cool stuff, and points at the end of the game. The first time I played this, I was a little lukewarm on it. I thought it was interesting, but nothing really grabbed me out of it. But we played it a few more times this past weekend, and I think I'm happier with it now. I think the real trick here is rotating out those technology cards, because there's a huge stack of them in the box, and they tell you to do a basic setup for your first game, but there's a lot more in that box beyond that. There's some recommended setups, there's some randomizing that you can do to just bring out all sorts of different technology, and that really freshens things up. And I like building the bag and trying to focus on a particular strategy or maneuvering around the board, trying to make sure you have board presence in all of the colors so that you can draft the different dice, because you can only, if I want a brown die, I can only get it if I'm on a brown space. There's an area majority aspect to earn points there. There's a lot to like in Dice Settlers, and I'm glad I kept it around and gave it another chance. So thumbs up from me, Dice Settlers.
That's interesting, because some people are having like the opposite thing from you, where they're basically saying that they enjoy it, but it's starting to wane for them a bit. Really? Okay. I did have one quibble with the components. There are different colored bags for putting your dice. One, they're too small. It's kind of hard to reach in and grab those dice, but they're also a little inexpensively made. They're fraying very quickly, even after just a few plays. So if I am going to keep it around, I might try and upgrade the bags. Alrighty, well, my next game I'm going to talk about is a game called Gnomopolis. Do you feel like I need to spell this one? I feel like I might need to. Gnomopolis. Gnomopolis. So this is actually, I brought this to a game meetup, and I think we had Gnome Town at the same time, and I was like, all right, guess there's a theme here. Gnomopolis is a game from Conclave Editora, and it's a game that it's in a pretty big box, but it felt very light, and I couldn't figure out why. But when I open it, there's mugs inside, these plastic mugs. And it's a bag building game, except it's a mug building game. And so you have a bunch of little gnomes who look like rocket ships, but whatever. You throw them in this cup. You start with some green ones, which are children, and some brown ones, which are just ordinary workers, I suppose. And then each turn you draw 3 of them, and you place them on various spots on your board. Sometimes you get rid of them and replace them with a different color, like there's red soldiers and yellow. Who knows what? Who cares? You're just changing colors to colors. And there's buildings in the middle that you can build, which give you more actions that you can take. Also, if you build the most buildings of certain types, you get cards which kind of like are the longest road type thing, give you more points, etc., etc. So all this comes together in a pretty easy-going way. You pull these 3, you put them out, you do this, and you keep going till the pile of meeples in the middle or gnomes in the middle is gone. And then you'll take all the ones that you still have, and you need to put them in houses. Each house will house a certain number and give you points, and then you lose a point for each one that you couldn't house somewhere. And then you've also been collecting points over the course of the game. Coins become points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. It's a pretty little game. It's a cool idea, and it's boring. Well, here's the deal. It's an interesting thing. I was like, ooh, this is cool. You know, I like this idea a lot. But you're simply just changing a green to a red, then a red to a yellow, then a yellow to a point. And then a point, you know, you'll change this yellow to a red and 2 points. And this red changes to a green and 2 points. And there's nothing, that's all you ever do is just change stuff to other stuff. It doesn't feel like it's tremendously efficient. And it has a problem that one player pointed out, which is true, where you're trying to collect these guys to fit in your houses, right? You're like, okay, I have room for 3 reds, 2 yellows, and 4 browns. Well, how do you know how many you have? You can look in your cup, and you can look at the ones that you have on your boards and stuff, and you can, every time you grab one, you're like, okay, do I have room for that? You're kind of counting stuff, but you don't have it all in any one place at one time. So you're just looking all over the place trying to figure out, and I think some people would be frustrated by that. So it's pretty, but there's so many other faster, more interesting deck building games, because that's what this is essentially. It's a gnome building game, I guess. It's not a bad game. It just doesn't really offer anything that new to the scene. So that's Gnomopolis.
Cool. Last one I want to talk about is a game my parents brought to my house. They were coming over just for a quick visit, and my mom said, I got a game for my birthday, and I want to play it with you just so I can get the strategy down. Because they had played it with other relatives, and I guess didn't do as well. So that she plops Azul down on the table when they arrive.
Are we talking about Azul?
We're talking about Azul, the original. I don't own either version of Azul in the house, so my kids had never seen this before, and my wife hadn't seen it. So I had only played, I think, once before. So it was nice to get a chance to play it again. Yeah,
this is fascinating.
I don't own it. So I learned very quickly that they had been taught incorrectly how to play this game, and Azul is not that complicated a game. The rule sheet is like 4 pages or something, right? But they got at least 3 rules wrong in how this game works. And part of the deliciousness of Azul is the limitations, having to draft tiles that you can't position the way you want. Like when you take a grouping of tiles, this is a game about getting tiles. You're collecting them from the center. You have to take one color's worth of tiles and then move the others on that space into the center. But then you have to place them in one slot on your board. And that's one rule they got wrong. They were just sort of spreading them out wherever they wanted to put them. So they were completing one color's worth of tiles very easily and quickly by just spreading them everywhere. They got the scoring wrong as far as, you get points for adjacent tiles. If you make a nice row or a column, when you place a new tile into that row or column, you get additional points if you have adjacent tiles. If you have like a row of 4 vertically, you get 4 points for that vertical, plus maybe another 2 or 3 for the horizontal row. They were doing that all wrong. So it was fun to set them straight, for one thing, because they kept saying, oh, we're going to tell my sister, they played this wrong. They shouldn't have won this game. That was fun. But we also got a chance to bring Azul to the table. I really do like it. I think I still enjoy Reef better out of the Next Move catalog. But Azul is a solid game, and it deserves all the love it's been getting. And I'm glad my parents like it. Azul.
Well, I'm glad too. I was looking at that on our document. I was like, wait a minute, is this the new Azul? I don't know what we're talking about here.
It's the original.
All right. Well, finally, after whining about it for several months, I got the expansion for Caverna, the Forgotten Folk.
You forgot about the folk?
Well, not anymore. Apparently, Caverna is about dwarves, except there's like 8 other races that are in this world. I know. Have you played Caverna before we go any farther?
No.
Oh.
I've watched people play Caverna.
All right. Well, maybe you can get in a game of it at Dice Tower West.
Maybe.
So, Caverna is an absolutely fantastic game. If I have not said before, it's marvelous. And what Caverna the Forgotten Folk does is it gives you a race. You might be the elves or the dark elves or the, I don't know, people made out of rocks or halflings or whatever.
Cool.
And each of these gets a special ability and gets actually a negative thing too, usually. And then they also add some new buildings to the buildings that you can build in Caverna that replace some of the buildings that are out there. So depending on what people are in the game, there might be a different grouping of buildings out there. So I like this. It's interesting. Like, for example, the rock people, I was them in one game, and I could eat rock instead of food. I'm sorry, let me rephrase it. I had to eat rock instead of food, which could sometimes was kind of a pain in the neck because I had a lot of food, and I was like, oh. But we got to eat the rock. And you get a discount on building things with rock. There's also trolls who can eat any animals, including the dogs, for food. The problem is they need more food than normal. And then there's people who are really good at farming. There's people who are really good at digging in the caves. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. It adds these races. And what this game does for Caverna is fascinating to me because it's essentially the same as Leaders expansion is for Seven Wonders.
Okay.
So people like Leaders for Seven Wonders. I thought it was an okay expansion, but a lot of people really like it. And when I ask them why, they're like, well, it gives you a focus. You get this leader, and it, you know what to do now. That's what this game does to Caverna. Caverna is this big, wide open, do whatever you want kind of game. But if I play with the guys who are really good at digging ruby mines, maybe I should dig some ruby mines. To the point where I think it's better for experts to play without this expansion. Or maybe you could play this expansion and pick something that does a strategy you don't normally use.
Right.
If that makes sense. So, I don't normally go out and do all this farming and get animals, but I picked this group, so now maybe I will.
Right. I mean, you have this bonus. You might as well do the thing that you get the bonus for.
There's a few other things that are involved in this game. There's some goblins who show up, and goblins are like really cheap workers that you can get. It's just that they always go last. When they pick up resources, they always drop one. They're slow, they're lazy, and they're inept. I think there's like 3 qualities to a goblin. It's like, oh, yay.
Nice. I'm narrating a book about a goblin right now.
Are you? Do you have to speak in that goblin talk that they always use? Yeah,
like in the first book, before he learned how to talk well, I had to do that. But yeah.
What's the book called?
It was called The Video Game Plotline Tester.
Okay.
And he was a goblin herbalist. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that's Caverna, the Forgotten Folk. Oof, we've been talking about games for a while.
We have. Let's talk about the future of artificial intelligence.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
Recently, Nolan Bard from Google's DeepMind research team and Jacob Furster from Oxford University posted a paper where they proposed that the card game Hanabi should be the benchmark for the next stage of machine learning. I was able to interview them for Ludology, and here is an excerpt.
So essentially what we've developed is, what we've done recently is we've put out a challenge paper that kind of describes why we think Hanabi is a challenging problem for machine learning. And along with that, we've published an open source code framework for being able to play the game. And there's some work with Google Brain as well, where they have released some code for developing a fairly simple agent for being able to play the game as well in their dopamine framework. So kind of altogether, this is kind of the basic tools that people could use to start doing research on this problem. And I think Jacob and I both hope that the community will pick up this problem and see where they can run with it, because it does present some challenges for current machine learning approaches.
So, Jacob, I think most of our listeners are probably familiar with Hanabi. It won the Spiel des Jahres a few years back. But can you give just a quick overview of the way that the game works and maybe some of the features that you think makes it useful for a machine learning context?
Yeah, so if you think about recent progress in machine learning and AI, a lot of it has been in games, and a lot of these games have been competitive. We call that technically zero-sum. So typically it's 2 players competing. It doesn't matter if you think about Go, as you mentioned, or chess, or even StarCraft. In all of these settings, there's only 2 players and they're trying to beat the other player. Now, this fundamentally means you don't really want to communicate with your opponent, because what are you going to tell them, apart from shouting at them or screaming or, be angry at them, because you're not playing together. If you think about the future of AI technology, it's pretty obvious that we don't want our bots just to compete with each other or with humans, right? Clearly, cooperation and communication are hugely important for the human society. It just so happens that these ideas haven't really been explored in the current AI benchmarks. And Hanabi as a game is focused exactly on this question. How can we learn to cooperate and to communicate? The way that Hanabi does this is by being a card game that has a fantastic little twist whereby you cannot see your own cards. So while you're trying to play sort of a cooperative type of solitaire where you're building stacks of legal sequences of cards called fireworks, each firework starts with a 1 and goes to a 5, you can't see your own cards. So you're relying on your teammates to provide information about which cards you should be playing right now, what you're holding in your hand. The catch here is that communication is costly. So in Hanabi, I can only provide information through two types of channels. First of all, I can pay a hint token and tell one of the players about a property of their cards, be it that they have ones or blue cards, whatever it is. But more importantly, players can have conventions. And that means because you can see what action I'm taking, and because humans have something called theory of mind, you can reason over why I took this action. And I, in turn, can decide to take actions which are informative when observed by you. And that's really this aspect of theory of mind is what makes Hanabi both challenging and interesting and fascinating to humans, but also a great new research frontier for AI and machine learning in the next decade.
So can you define theory of mind a little bit deeper? Because I think that's just a real interesting concept in the context of computers.
At its core, it's kind of the idea that other agents and other actors in your world are entities with their own mental states. So these could be things like beliefs or their perceptions of things or any number of different kind of mental states. And that those mental states kind of influence what their behavior is going to be. And so by kind of reasoning about the mental states of the other agents in your world, you can kind of make inferences about what their behavior is going to be. And so kind of as Jacob was mentioning, there's this theory of mind that humans end up using for communicating. And so the way that people often end up using this is that they will say something and rely on the other people in the conversation to infer meaning about what they said based off of the context. So, for instance, if I said, like, I have a green light, that could mean many different things based off of the context in which it was said. If I happen to be at an intersection, you'll probably reason about that and think, oh, well, you have a literal green light, meaning that I can drive. Or maybe it's like I'm developing a project and I say I have a green light, and that means I can advance the project, I can continue on. But a lot of these things are kind of contextual and they're dependent on this mental state. And humans are really good at using that mental state and exploiting that kind of information to have really efficient communication, whereas a lot of the machine learning techniques that we have right now don't really reason about the intention behind what other people are saying, and so they don't really pick up this extra convention that humans kind of have naturally.
If you're interested in hearing more of this interview, including a deeper discussion of some of the AI techniques that have already been tried with Hanabi, the full 30 minutes is available over on the Ludology podcast. This is Geoff Engelstein with GameTech.
Tom.
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 Hi, Tom.
How do you pack your hats for safe travel?
If you were stranded on a desert island with one of the aliens from Cosmic Encounter, which one would it be?
Tom, gamers want to know. Is that Eric's real voice?
And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
All right, our first question is from Adam, and he says, how old must a board game to be considered a modern classic? When does a modern classic just become a classic? Is Catan a classic board game, or is that still considered to look like a Monopoly and Yahtzee? To be considered a classic, does a game need to have a large mass market reach? And what recently released game do you think has what it takes to become a modern classic? He thought it might be Splendor, but now he doesn't think that would be the case, and instead Azul is my pick for the next modern classic. I'm going to answer your last question first, because I think that's easier. I don't know that Splendor will hit that list either. Azul is definitely going to be considered that, as would Codenames for sure.
Okay, yeah.
And some people will argue the mind, I would imagine.
I don't know. I think the mind is a little too quirky to be a classic. I think there has to be like a reach, a collective consciousness sort of level to be called a classic. It's the sort of thing like if you're hearing this game mentioned in spaces where you don't expect it to be. You're hanging out, waiting for your coffee, and you hear some people talk about playing a game. And it's not a space that you would expect people to be talking about playing board games. And they mention Ticket to Ride, which would definitely be considered one of these modern classics. Catan is an interesting one because it's old enough that it probably could be considered a classic at this point. And among hobbyists, it is a classic and not just a modern classic. But for folks who aren't as into the hobby, I think they're still thinking about Monopoly and Yahtzee as the classics, and anything that was made after 1982 isn't a classic. It's a modern classic. It's too new, by gum.
I don't know that there's like any real answer to this. How many times have you seen a game, the classic whatever, or the modern classic? People just use these terms any way they want.
Yeah.
I can't really give a good reason for them to whether it's a classic or not, if that makes sense. I can't really answer that. All I can say is I consider it to be a classic. So yes, I consider Catan a classic game. I mean, it's what, 30 years old now? No, 20. It's 23 years old, right?
96.
No, it was 95.
Okay.
So, that's 24 years old now? Come on now. I mean, most people look at classics as things from their childhood usually. Who knows?
Right.
But it's a good question.
Some people were children in 1995.
I was in college, wasn't I?
Yeah. Christopher says more video games are now getting the virtual reality treatment, and some board games too. I consider Chronicles of Crime a VR implemented game. Of course, if everyone at the table needs to be wearing VR goggles, it'd be expensive and frankly a little over the top. But ignoring that, and assuming the VR implementation won't affect player interaction, out of all the existing games, which ones do you think would be neat with VR? I think if you could get the control aspect to be precise enough, I'd love to do some dexterity stuff like Rhino Hero. Build things.
Really?
With the VR.
I thought the whole point of dexterity is like it's actually there.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to like flick a penguin in virtual ice cool. I always feel like I'm not sure that the physics are right anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking more of the manipulation style dexterity games. You're picking up a piece and rotating it and trying to position it. I just think that would be fun. I also
Unless
like
you're making
the animated
a Rhino here
boards
that climbs up 200 stories and you're like climbing up.
Yes, you can do extreme tall structures.
You said you also like the what? The Huda?
The animated boards. So stuff like Catan VR, where if you get down really close and look, you can see birds flying around. And I mean, it's sort of it's like a living embodiment of the 3D chessboard from Star Wars.
Okay, I can see that. I was going to say I would like to play maybe something like Mansions of Madness.
Ooh.
Although that would scare the snot out of me.
Like first person, that would be crazy.
Yeah, it'd be scary, right?
Yeah.
Look behind you. You look behind you, and there's some sort of guy standing there.
Yeah. Cultist.
I just wet my pants playing a board game.
In VR.
So it's not really wetting your pants?
Yeah, it's just virtually.
Oh, that's not so bad then.
Yeah.
Jordan says, what's your favorite way for a game to end? What about playing a number of rounds before the game is done, or a player triggering end game scoring by doing a certain objectives, or an instant winner if you complete an objective like in Flip City, or some sort of hybrid where it could be either one? What is your favorite? This is a good question, by the way. I like this one.
Yeah. I like one of the circumstances that a player triggers the end. Whether it's a race that somebody crosses a finish line, a certain total of points, or a certain money total, or one of these triggers that you have a certain number of objectives that you've managed to complete. Having 5 rounds and then the game is over, that's fine, but I find it less exciting. I like the tension of not knowing when something's going to be triggered. And knowing...
What about a game that has a certain number of rounds, and then on the 5th round you roll a die, and on a 9 the game ends, and then the next round it could be an 8 or 9. You know what I mean?
I don't like that. That bothers me.
All right. My favorite way is there to be multiple ways for the game to end. I like games where there might be a set way for the game to end, but if I can stab Eric in the back when he's not looking, I can also win that way. Like alternate ways to win.
Wait a minute. You hate games like that because we talked about one game that has the alternate victory condition that you despise.
Well, clarify this. I don't know what we're talking about.
Attica.
Yeah, but that's like that's not quite the same way. That's not because I did. No, listen.
I sneak around,
I despise
and then I win.
Attica because of the methodology of that method. Because you put down your thing and you're like, Tom, you have to block him or he'll win. I'm like, I don't want to block him, so I'm not going to. Tony, you got to block him now. And Tony's like, what? You're a jerk, Tom. That's what I don't like.
But I sow discontent, and therefore I win. It's my alternate way to win.
This happens every single time you play this game. No one blocks until they make the last person block.
Well, that's their fault.
Anyway, that's not what I mean. I don't have a problem with the alternate victory conditions. I think that's fine. I have a problem with the methodology to getting there.
All right.
Like I'm talking about a game where like you can do this, but there's also another way to win if you collect the most. You know, like he mentioned Flip City. There's 2 different ways to win in Flip City. I like that. So that's what I like is when there's multiple ways to win, as long as it seems balanced to get both of them.
Tony is in the process of performing a board game purge to make room for things that aren't board games. It's hard, obviously. Trying to make a list of games to toss is difficult, especially because simply getting rid of games that aren't played much doesn't always work. There are games we will keep no matter what. My wife, for example, has a copy of Kolezhka she will never get rid of, even though we've only played the game twice, because of the significance the historical theme has for her and her family. And I will always hold on to Eldritch Horror because it was the first hobby game I ever bought. But a lot of games could probably go given the right reason. So how do you let go of games? Do you limit yourself to a certain number of games with a specific mechanism? Games that are smaller than a certain physical size? What do you have to do to convince yourself a game isn't worth keeping?
Yeah, we talk about this several times, but the fact of the matter is that it's going to be different for everybody. I let go of games because I just pick a game and I'm like, I don't play that one that much these days, so it's out. And I kind of go by the same size, but there's no hard and fast rule. Cody Jones, we haven't mentioned him in a long time, used to have the Jones rule. Mm-hmm. Where he said you only need one game that meets a particular bucket.
Yep.
I don't necessarily agree with that because I think if you have a particular bucket that you really like, it's okay to have like 6 games in that bucket.
Mm-hmm.
But
you should get rid of the 7th. 6 is the hard limit, Tom says.
6.
You can't have more than
Breaking
6.
News! Vassal says. I mean, the whole thing's interesting, right? How people get rid of games and such. I got to be really cautious here because I have pretty strong opinions about just collecting games and not playing them. But I know that there's a lot of people who disagree with that. So
right. I mean, size is definitely a limiting factor. I find it easier to hang on to smaller footprint games. Box size will usually let me hang on to a game longer. But also, picking it up and saying, do I have an audience for this game? Is this copy of the game going to hit the table with a group that I'm going to see in the next year or two? If I think it's going to work with my kids, it'll stick around most likely. If I look at it and say, I'm only going to play this with my regular game group and they already have a copy, then I'm more likely to let it go. But it's hard. Sometimes you're forced to make those decisions more readily as you run out of space.
Yeah. Well, this actually is a good one. I love this one to go to like the Facebook threads or the Board Game Geek threads and for people to talk about this because it's an interesting topic, I think. Jordan has a very specific one. He has 2 local stores, Store A and Store B.
I love that place.
Store A was offering their games slightly lower than MSRP. The other store, Store B, heard about this. Store B was pricing their games much higher than MSRP. And they weren't happy that customers were going to Store A, who were getting more customers due to cheaper prices.
Okay.
So Store B sent employees to Store A to buy the products and then sent pictures to the supplier. Store A was ordered to stop selling at these prices or they would lose the supplier. Jordan is a customer of Store A and he was not impressed. What do we think of Store B's actions? How exactly does MSRP pricing work for games, and was Store A in the wrong?
Huh. See, this seems contrary to what I know of current policy, because usually it involves advertising. Like, you can't advertise low prices.
It depends on the company. You can still say you're not going to sell something. Apple Computer manages to keep their stuff from being sold for cheaper prices. It just does.
It's true.
So, just to clarify, a publisher can do what they want. It's not often policed that well. In fact, I believe Magic the Gathering just took MSRP off the packs of cards, which is causing some, consternation online. But be that as it may, the MSRP, the second word of that is suggested.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's pretend that the MSRP isn't a thing. Let's pretend that what I mean is that it's not suggested that you have to do it. So let's say the company has a rule, you can't sell below this price. This is what I'm not understanding about this particular story. Store B is pricing their stuff higher than MSRP. Store A is selling it lower. But wouldn't, if Store A is selling it just for MSRP, wouldn't people still go there?
Yeah.
They're still cheaper, right? Now, what Store B did definitely happens. It's definitely happened. I know that local stores have gone and taken pictures of big box stores like Target and Walmart when they break Magic street dates and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I can understand their pain because a rule is no good if other people aren't following it.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure that this, justifies. I would be hesitant to point a finger at a tattletale because it's also my business. If Eric and me both own stores and he's breaking the rules and I'm losing business to him, I might be like, teacher, he's breaking the rules.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how am I supposed to be a fan of Store A here? If Store A was breaking the rules, I can't be like, these guys. I mean, if there's rules, you got to follow them.
It's true. I mean, it's just annoying, really. But
sure. I mean, Store B seems like they're not the nicest of people per se, but at the same time, I don't know that they're doing anything wrong.
Right. Why is Store B selling higher than MSRP? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I know. That does seem that's what's this weird. If it was B was selling it for the price, A was selling it cheaper, B complained, it'd be a whole lot easier to talk about. This is kind of weird. I'm like, A, just make it the price and you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Frustrating, but you're right. I think ultimately, if there is a rule, if the publisher has laid down a policy, you got to follow the policy if you still want to sell the product. Scott has a question about the Dice Tower Seals of Approval and Excellence. He understands that the seals are awarded to games with a rating of 8 or higher, and Tom discussed this in a video, but Scott can't find that and forgot what Tom said. So he's wondering who has the authority to award these seals. Is it just Tom, or is it the entire Dice Tower review team? For example, can Eric award Stevenson's Rocket with a seal of approval, even though Tom might despise the game? Does Tom get final word on these awards, or are the ratings averaged amongst the reviewers? Not that it has to be that mathematical, in my opinion. I'm just curious how it works.
We go with the highest score. Easy enough.
Yep.
But at this point in time, we go by actual reviews you can find on the internet. So if Eric has video reviewed it, then yes. If it's just an audio part of our show, we haven't really done that, mostly because Eric hasn't been giving those number ratings anyway.
That's true.
So if Eric does a video review, then yes, not a problem. But it's just whoever's the highest of it. So if there's only one person, that's easy. If we do like Miami Dice, I'll say, what's everyone's score? Oh, Sam said 8. Okay, it's an 8.
Yep.
And that's fine. It's nuance and stuff, but it's just the easiest way to do it. I don't have it's not Tom's rating. It's just whoever. So if Brian Drake, one of our reviewers, does a higher rating than me, or I do a higher rating than him, we just pick the highest rating.
Yep.
So that's that. Last question is from Kyle. Kyle says he was playing Scythe with his group. So they're playing a game. He's doing well. He's feeling pretty good that he's about to win. And a person in his group is taking their turn and pondering what action that person will take. His best friend, the spouse of that person, tells this person that they should attack him for my goods and to get a star. So they take the advice. They attack him where he has 1 mech to their 3 mechs. They win the battle. He can't compete. This sets him back. Blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, this guy's girlfriend won the game. It had nothing to do with these other people. He finished second, and this person who attacked him took last place. And there's a strong likelihood, he said, that had I not been attacked, he would have won the game. Do I have any place to be upset that my friend told his spouse what action to take? It did not end up helping his spouse at all in the game. They still took last place. And he doesn't want to play a competitive game for 2 hours if the deck is stacked against me, and the situation felt like that. Would I be out of line to tell him that I do not appreciate this strategy to their spouse? Or are these just sour grapes?
Why not both?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when I'm playing a game, I will often point out, let's say me, Eric, and Mandy and Suzanne are playing a game, and it's Mandy's turn. I will point out and be like, you could hit Eric right there.
Right, but then I can obviously say,
do that.
Yeah, but Tom is looking pretty juicy too. I think the return needs to be there. The issue comes when there is a previous relationship, and one player is more likely to trust the other, and it almost ends up being a teamwork aspect. And that can feel a little unfair. My inclination here is that this was a one-time incident. This is a problem if it continues in multiple games. But sometimes somebody just takes advice that you aren't happy with. You were sitting there with only 1 mech to somebody else's 3.
Yeah. I'm definitely with Eric in this situation. Again, we're not there, so we don't know all the details. But sometimes something you think collusion just seemed like a good idea to them at the time. Mm-hmm. And you need to be a little bit better at saying, no, not me, them.
Yeah, point out another lovely low-hanging fruit somewhere else. Or you could attack over here, and that would be much better.
Yeah, so I'm not too... I don't know. I feel like this is okay.
This is kind of a magic circle thing too, like your group dynamics. How much discussion and table talk do you do? If some players are just quietly calculating in the game, and others are being a lot more vocal about, like Tom said, oh well, you could attack over there. That looks like a really great move for you. It's really sort of a comfort level with the players at the table. How much you want that to be happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. Woo! It's time to talk about some games.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
All right, I don't know that we have ever done this list before, Eric. I know I've done it with Sam and Z, but I don't think I've done it with you.
No, we haven't done this. And I found this to be a very difficult list. Our most played games of our lifetimes. And my issue was that, like, Board Game Geek offers this lovely tool of logging your plays. And simply running a list of all the games I've played since I started logging, that was easy. But the tricky part is going back to before I started logging games and trying to think, now, did I play this game more than whatever I had in the number 9, 8, 7 position in the data I had? Do I remember playing these other games more often than that? So some of these numbers are a little fuzzy.
And I'll be even stronger with that. They're all fuzzy for me. I'm just guessing. But I'm making educated guesses. I don't keep track of any of my games. But I feel pretty confident on these. Although I'll say, the fact of the matter is that, you will think when you play games, you'll think you play them a whole lot more than you do. Until you start keeping track of your scores. Yeah. When you start keeping track of your scores, you'll go, oh, I don't play this game nearly as often. I'll meet people to be like, oh, yeah, I must have played that game 50 times. But if you sit them down, they might have played it 9.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where I often ended up is when I looked at the numbers, there are games that I remember playing a lot as a kid, but was it really more than 25, 30 times? Because those were the numbers I was looking at for some other games on the list. And I don't think I reached that even for some of the quote-unquote classics from the childhood.
So Eric lies a lot. All right, here we go.
Pretty much.
Hey, there's also 0 crossover.
That is true. We are very different people.
Thanks. Yeah, there's no game on Eric's list that I considered except for his number 10. So let's go there.
Number 10.
Number 10 is Lupin Louie. One reason why the numbers are so high here is because those games are really fast. And I also included Lupin Chewie in my, it's the same game. It's a lovely little kid's dexterity game with the airplane or the Millennium Falcon that goes around in a circle and you're trying to smack it up. And my kids love it. It's hit the table a lot. Number 10, Lupin Louie.
Yeah, like I said, this is the one I could put on my list because I have played Lupin Louie. But I don't know that I played it enough yet. But I certainly have played this one a lot. My number 10 is Cosmic Encounter. Yeah, I mean, my favorite game. It's going to be on the list a lot because I like it. People say, shouldn't that be your number 1? No, fool. There's so many games, and Cosmic takes a while to play. But True. I do play it on average once a convention. It seems. I played it on the cruise. I played it at one of the retreats. It's just gonna happen, you know. It just for some reason. Well, I mean, it is my favorite game, so people are constantly asking me to play it.
Right.
So, my number 10, Cosmic Encounter.
Number 9.
Number 9 for me is King of Tokyo. Another one that's had a lot of family playtime for this. There was a time I was playing this with my eldest son a lot. And you know, the mechanics are simple. It plays relatively quickly. You can even have super quick games and just set it right up and play a different round, get some new powers on the table and do it again. So King of Tokyo, number 9.
You know what? I should say this is also one that could have maybe made my list at some point too.
Mm-hmm.
My number 9 is one of my, actually, I think on my list, it's the only party game, which is surprising because I thought more would have made it. But number 9 is Time's Up. This party game gets played a lot. Now, actually, I played it less in the past few years, I think, than I played it when I first got it. But for a while, I was taking it to every time I went to some get-together. I brought Time's Up. And it's still just, you know, at a lot of conventions and stuff, there's still a group of people. You can probably find some people playing Time's Up. So my number 9, Time's Up, which I think beats Werewolf out for the, you know, like this type of game.
Number 8.
My number 8 was a surprise for me. When I actually ran the numbers, I actually did have the data on this one. That was Mice and Mystics. And all I can say with Mice and Mystics is that we lost a lot. So we had to do a lot of replay of missions, and
I don't count those as real games.
No, they were real games. There was a win or a loss involved. It just happened to be a loss a lot. There was a time that my son and I would play this every day after school. We just had like the right amount of time. We had like 2 hours from the time I'd pick him up at school and when I needed to start making dinner. And so it was just this perfect. I'd set it up. I'd have it ready to go when I brought him home, and then we'd play for a couple hours, and we'd get through a mission or fail at a mission, and then I'd make dinner, and we'd try again the next day. And so a lot of table time for Mice and Mystics. My number 8.
My number 8 harkens back to childhood, and that is Stratego. Man, I remember so distinctly getting this for my birthday. I was like, what is this game? It's like chess and checkers, but you can't see your opponent's pieces. There's strategy in this game. It's right in the title. And so I played it and played it and played it. Played it against my parents, so they got sick of it. Played it against people in the neighborhood. Loved Stratego. This one will eventually drop off the list as I get closer to my 80s, I'm sure, because I don't think I'll ever play it again. But all those childhood plays certainly add up. So my number 8, Stratego.
Number 7.
My number 7 is the Pokemon trading card game. One, any trading card game, you're going to have all these iterative games where you tweak a deck and then you try it out and see how it works, and then that didn't work. Let's try something else. Let's tweak something else in the deck. See how this combination works. Get some new cards. Add those to the deck. Try it again. And also more recently teaching the game to my kids and teaching them how to do it and bringing out all the old cards and realizing how much less powerful they are than all the new cards. But still, played it a lot. Pokemon, the trading card game, my number 7.
Sure, and it's not a surprise to see any kind of collectible card game on these things. Like in my top 20, there's probably 4 collectible card games. I got one on my list, but I could have added several others.
Mm-hmm.
My number 7 is Ticket to Ride. Now, when I was making this list, I thought, do I include app play?
Mm-hmm.
Did you?
I did, yes.
Good. Okay, so did I. So Ticket to Ride is my... Because I played this a ton on the app, but I've also played this a lot in real life. I wouldn't have added just the app. I felt like I would add the app and the board games together, and I played this so many times. Now, granted, there's a lot of different maps, so you could argue and say that those are different games, I suppose. But, man, I do love this game, and it's hard for me to think of a long plane flight where I'm doing all these games and things on my computer, and then I'll be like on my iPad, and I'll go, you know what? I should play a quick game of Ticket to Ride. Me and my wife played it a lot, too. Super fun. My number 7, Ticket to Ride.
Nice.
Number 6.
My number 6 is Flux. We played a lot of original Flux in the early days of getting into it. Back when I was playing Pokemon a lot, we also got a copy of Flux and played it with just about everyone we could run into. And now, as the Dice Tower's dedicated Flux reviewer, I am still playing a good amount of Flux because I'll play each of the new ones a couple of times to get a feel for them. So those numbers keep going up for Flux. I still enjoy the game, and it's my number 6.
Speaking of playing games with my wife, my number 6 has to be Lost Cities. We have played this game a cajillion times. I don't know, but we certainly played it a lot. It is so fun. The cards in my set are so worn out from... Actually, I got a second set, and I very rarely do that. Love this 2-player game. So much back and forth fun. Number 6, Lost Cities.
Number 5.
Number 5 is Pandemic, my wife's favorite game. So it hits the table a lot. It's often it's hard. We'll try lots of new co-op games, but we often come back to the granddaddy of them all, Pandemic. Number 5.
My number 5 is a game that I have always and for all time have played correctly, and that is No Thanks. I don't know what we are talking about. No Thanks.
Dusty in here.
No Thanks is such a great game, though. People are like, all these games, they look overwhelming. I'll be like, but wait, look at this one. It's just a few cards, and it's easy to play. Although, for goodness sake, I played one of the worst games of No Thanks, I don't know, a month or so ago, where I was teaching people, and I put out, like, the 27 card, and the person was like, yeah, I'll take that. I was like, no, you don't have to take the 27. You could put a chip on it. No, I want to keep my chips. I was like, okay, fine, take the 27. They took the 27. The next person gets a 16. They're like, well, that's not as bad as 27. I'll take that. I was like, oh no, this game's not going to go well. I think I'm winning this game. So, but I still love it. No Thanks, my number 5.
Yeah, I feel like I should carry No Thanks around more often because it does work with so many people, and it would be a quick and simple thing to bring out. I just don't think to pack it in whatever I'm bringing along.
Number 4.
Number 4 is one I included app play on, and that's Can't Stop. My kids really enjoyed this one in the app, and they've played it with each other a bunch. I've played a bunch, played it in the older versions, the more recent Griffin Games version. It's so quick, simple, again, wide appeal for these games, so it hits the table a lot. Number 4, Can't Stop.
My number 4 is another one from my childhood that we played so many times that I don't know, Axis and Allies. And then I played it as an adult, too. I played it in college. I played it later on. And I have so many good memories of this game, and yet if I never played it again, every time I would care so much. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe I should, it's been a while. I pick up the box, look at the back, I'm like, I don't know, I could play this. And then I look at some people playing it on a table in a store, and I'll be like, oh, yeah. Those days where we just sat on the porch for 7 hours straight and didn't move, those days are gone. Now I sit there and go, we could have played 3 really good games, but instead we're still playing Axis and Allies. So I still have a lot of nostalgia for this. My number 4, Axis and Allies.
Number 3.
Number 3 is definitely one that I played a lot of growing up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. This is a Midwest staple. That's Euchre, the trick-taking card game. This was very big in the theater circles and the forensics, the speech competition circles that I was involved in. And during a lot of downtime during Tech Sunday or while we were waiting for results in forensics, we would be playing Euchre and just hand after hand after hand after hand. This is the sort of game that you can chat and be social and just hang out and just keep playing. And so I racked up a lot of plays of Euchre, and one that I have not played much at all recently, but it could be one that my kids will enjoy at some point. Number 3, Euchre.
My number 3 is the collectible card game that did make my list, and I played this so much, and that's Overpower. I know Overpower is not the best CCG. It came out in the glut of CCGs that came out immediately following Magic the Gathering, but it was superheroes. I was enamored with it. I was excited about playing it, and unlike Axis and Allies, I still have Overpower cards, and I'll still get them out and play them. Bring me a couple decks at a convention, and I'll teach you how to play yourself. So much fun. Overpower, my number 3.
Number 2.
My number 2, kind of like Tom's number 10, is my favorite game, Merchant of Venus. I try and play this at every major convention, anything that we're going to have a significant amount of play time at.
You end up playing it multiple times, too.
Sometimes, but it's a pretty good time investment. I try and do it at least once. Sometimes I'll sneak a second game in. But I love teaching this to new players. And this one I have ranked, logged every game, and it's kind of nice to see how many times it's hit the table. Merchant of Venus, I'm bringing it to Dice Tower West. I'm hoping to get it to the table as well there. Number 2.
My number 2 is moving up fast. Will probably be number 1 at some point. And that's Dominion. From the time it came out, Dominion. And I'm like, all right, we're cooling down this. Another expansion. Dominion. Okay, we're cooling down another expansion. I played it like 4 times at the last retreat. I played it, I think, on the cruise a couple times.
Nice.
I got people threatening to play it with me on the Dice Tower West. And, rematch. They're like, wow.
It's a threat. Yeah, okay.
And I just still like it that much. It's just a great game. My number 2, Dominion.
Yeah, I'd love to get this one to the table more often. I've got a whole bunch of those cards. They're just sitting there. This is another one I got to get my elder son to start playing.
And finally, number 1.
Speaking of deck builders, my number 1 is Penny Arcade, the card game. Now, I've only done a handful of physical games of this one, but for, I want to say, like 3 years, I had one solid string of games going on the app for this game. It's the deck builder from Cryptozoic, based on the comic strip, the webcomic. And with a couple, Jason and Jamie, we played this game constantly. In fact, 2 or 3 games at once that we just keep resetting and playing hundreds of games over those several years. And still enjoyed it. And the only thing that stopped us is that they didn't update the app when the iOS updated, and they required all these apps to update. Penny Arcade didn't update, and so we had to stop. But until something beats it, my number 1, Penny Arcade, the card game.
See, this I would never have actually guessed this one.
It's totally out of the blue. It's just that the app worked really well, and we got on a roll, and we enjoyed playing it, and we just kept going.
Well, there you go. My number 1 is Pitch Car. Every event, Pitch Car gets played. Every event I run. And that's not just there. I take it to church. I take it to kids' meetups. I bring it out for my kids at a party. It's the thing. It's the bomb. Dominion's probably going to pass it. Next time we do this, Dominion will be ahead of it just because it's faster to play. But pitch car. I love it. And where are my loops? Get me my loops.
A kingdom for a loop.
I do like pitch cars, so that's my number 1 played game. Of course, remembering all these numbers are, who knows what, probably true. People's Choice. Now, this is a little weird to People's Choice because it's just people putting them down, and so we're averaging them out.
Right, yeah.
Number 10, chess.
Yep.
That was kind of on my short list, right? Because I know I played a lot of it as a kid. Number 9, Seven Wonders. Number 8, Catan. Number 7, Carcassonne. This is starting to sound like a Gateway Games list. Number 6, Poker.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, a lot of people play poker. Number 5, Pandemic. Number 4, Ticket to Ride. Number 3, no shock here, Magic the Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Codenames.
Wow.
Now, come on. Every convention I see people play Codenames. It is played all the time.
I'm only surprised because Codenames is, 4 years old? And that it has risen up this high on the all-time most played list. I get it. It's quick. It's got a huge wide appeal, and there's a ton of versions, so people are playing it all the time. It just surprises me that it's gone up this high so fast.
And number 1, Dominion. So, hey, that's almost tied with me. I'm claiming it. Remember we used to try to match the People's Choice?
We did. This would be a weird one to try and match, but yes.
I'm more pop culture than you, Eric. Alrighty. Well, folks, I'm excited. The first Dice Tower West, Dice Tower Retreat on the horizon. We're going to be announcing the dates for Dice Tower Cruise soon. So, yeah, it's going to be a good year. The doldrums of no convention times are almost behind us. Actually, I wouldn't even say they're doldrums. I really do like spending time with my family. So
I like my family too, yes.
But I am excited to get back out on the circuit, though. Here we come.
Yes.
Walking down the street. It's just Eric, Summerer, and me. Every time we meet. All right.
Yeah, okay. No, sure. Except it's not.
Hey, we're the Dice Tower. And people just say we're dicing around. And I'm going to pass it off to Eric. I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to the Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 596, was recorded on February 28th, 2019. Next week, Mandy, Suzanne, and I join Tom, Sam, and Z on stage at Dice Tower West for a live Top 5. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Roy Kennedy, and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham. Periodic brownouts brought to you by Underwattage Cities. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, email us at Dicetower@gmail.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Gamers Anonymous, The Snakes Cast, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, The Geek All-Stars, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, The Dukes of Dice, Our Turn, Board with Video Games, Solosaurus, Meeple Overboard, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. Did you realize that future Tom is eating at a Las Vegas buffet right now?
No, he's not. He's on a plane. Thinking about a buffet and hoping he has run enough this morning to cover for this buffet. I'm working out now. Got to go run. I'll be back.
Okay.